My question here, Morehouse School of Medicine, totally believe violence is a public health issue. When we're working with young people who are in schools, I would love to know your thoughts on when schools are calling the police for things that when we were in high school, we had in-school suspension, we had out-of-school suspension, but now we're faced with working with youth who have a criminal record at the age of 13 for something that we would have gotten inter-school or out-of-school suspension for, and then that leads them right on that school-to-prison pipeline. So I would love to know your thoughts on that, and how can we, as community members, help work with our schools on disciplinary issues to keep the police out of those situations if they're not truly warranted.
Hopefully we will still have school boards that are under our voting control and they won't be taken over by the governor.
Say it again.
And then we need to participate in establishing the policy that would enable the principal, the assistant principal, the counselors, the school resource officer to be there and properly handle the child rather than calling in the police. Because quite honestly, I'm scared of the police. You know, I'm not going to stop in a dark place with the police. If they try to stop me, I'm going to try to move to a populated, lighted area because of the way things are happening at this time, and there seems to be an epidemic of that violence for some unknown reason. I don't know if it's because many of these people may be suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, and they just believe, and they've only been taught to use force rather than to tailor it to the situation, such as dealing with students, dealing with children whose brains haven't even been formed completely. And they have no training in that. I wish Cedric Alexander was here, because when police officers go into schools, they need to have that level of training. You don't just need to send your homicide unit out, or you know, the people who deal with the real bad folk. You need to deal with people just in domestic violence situations. They require training for that, supposedly. But we need people who know how to deal with young children. And of course, at age 13, unless they're tried as adults, they would not have a record. But if they are tried with adults, that would follow them the rest of their lives.
And to that important footnote too, thank you, Judge, is that we have to be careful to expunge our juveniles' records. And most parents and guardians don't know that there is a process.
Yes.
And while I was on the bench, I fought hard for it to be automatic if a child had not come back to the bench. But I was a lone voice in the wilderness. But that's something that needs to be taken up again, because a kid, even though it's juvenile, is trying to get into the military service, because that's the only way he or she is going to be able to go to college. And, you know, it's a problem. So, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Dan?
And one of the things in DeKalb is that our DeKalb County Police Department is actually not in our schools. So we don't have a school in DeKalb County where DKPD or homicide or major felony is actually policing the school. I'll also tell you, you know, there are two sides of it. One, I believe that we've moved too hard in the wrong direction, which is criminalizing behavior that, you know, used to be something you would get suspended for or handled in school. So I saw that happening with the rash of school shootings. Quite frankly, that's when you really saw it turn up around the. Am I talking loud enough? Because they're really loud over there. So take this microphone off. So that's when you really saw it happening. Do I need to shout too? So it's like
Where's my cowbell?
But you really saw it start happening around the school shootings around the country, you know, and some of them happen even here in Metro Atlanta. But I'll say on the other side, my first job before I became an attorney was a teacher's assistant in inner city Atlanta. And I see Alvin Dollar here. He was over the Dunbar Center, and I was working next door as a young 21-year-old man as a teacher's assistant at Dunbar Elementary. And I can tell you, even the young kids were very violent. I was kicked in the groin, I was punched in the face, and I'm talking about 8 and 9 year olds. I saw one 8-year-old tried to stab another 8-year-old with a pair of scissors, and I had to break that up. And so these are just kids, and so imagine what a lot of these administrators are dealing with by the time they get to high school, and and my father is a retired educator, and he saw the transition where they would just call the coaches in, but it got to the point where he was getting involved in physical altercations on a weekly basis, and they had to bring in SROs, which are basically police officers in school. So, it's a complex issue, but I would tell you, I think we've gone too far in one direction, but I don't know if every school is necessarily safe for the teachers that work there either, so.
And we saw the most recent example of that in Columbia, South Carolina this week. But I'll tell you, all they had to say is, I'm gonna call your mom and daddy.
Yeah.
And so some of this really goes back to parenting and us taking responsibility as a community and not just showing up at the school to curse the teacher and the principal out, but rather to be involved and be hands-on and really try to rebuild that community. Yes.
I just wanted to add, the latest evidence about the young lady in South Carolina was that she was a ward of the state.
Yes.
Are you surprised? No.